We are live. Welcome to the Listen to This Bull live show. My name is Matt Mulholland. That's Remington Huggins. Sometimes when you look at him, you know why he's called a Huggins. This is the show that we talk about bullshit in the insurance world. We're going to talk about hurricanes today. I got TJ McCormack waiting in the wings. We just got done driving through the hurricane. I'm going to pull him on right after I click this button. TJ.
What's going on, Matt?
Long time no see.
How's it going, Remington?
What's going on, TJ?
Another day. Beautiful Colorado here. Wish I was over in Florida where you guys are. But
we're here in Colorado.
Yeah, where I just was.
You got to see some of the gorgeous Florida weather while you were here.
I did. It was beautiful last week.
It was, a little bit. So for anyone that's watching this, if you've never seen the show before, this is heavily driven by the audience. So you can ask questions. You can make commentary. We'll bring in good questions on the show. We'll try to answer them. So if you're watching this live, the benefit is you get to be part of the show. So post your questions in the comments, wherever it is that you're watching this. We'll get them here. TJ.
Yeah, man.
Dude, we just got out of Hurricane Idalia.
We did. No, I can't believe that you and I got to ride through another hurricane together. So,
I mean, the best part was what we got to ride in, which was awesome.
Right.
Remington's been complaining that he really wants to go many times. You can see it in his eyes whenever I say we're going to a hurricane. He's like, I want to go. So many people do.
You know, it was a lot of fun. The preparation, though, I think this next time we'll be a little bit more prepared, but we were a lot more prepared this time than we were for Ian. And Ian, let's just talk about that real quick. I don't think that there's anything that has compared to something I've been through in my life that was like Hurricane Ian, that just wrecked us for like 15 hours. It felt like. And Hurricane Idalia, we thought was going to be the same way.
I've been in 7 hurricanes now. 3 of them were not on purpose. I happened to live in Daytona when 3 hurricanes hit the east coast of Florida. Well, not just the east coast, but hit Florida all at the same time, crossed right over us. So I've been through 7, 4 on purpose. Ida was pretty strong, and it sat for a while, just like Ian did. But the eye went around us and then continued on. So we were sitting in the path in Homa, and Homa still got destroyed, but we never experienced the eye wall. Ian was something else, man. That was, we sat on that eye wall for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Now it's something else. But Idalia, we saw the eye wall. We sat inside of it. We got to see the interior of the eye. It wasn't very collected.
No.
And it was done in 30 minutes. It was crazy.
I think you and I looked at each other about 30 minutes before the eye was supposed to hit us, and I made the comment. It made a little jiggle, it made like one little move, and that back end of that eye wall just fell out of it. And as it hit us, you could tell like that it wasn't a very good storm.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was destined to be huge with all that extra heat in the Gulf, and it just didn't happen that way. I got to ask you though, for audience sake, people talk about going into these hurricanes a lot, and they say that all these storm chasers are going to run in after the thing, and I think they're probably talking about contractors. But if you were someone thinking about, or if you could give advice to someone thinking about chasing a hurricane, what would be the biggest point of advice you'd want to give them?
Your preparation and what you actually are going to be driving in. What are the tools that you're going to be bringing along with you? Do you really need to be inside that hurricane? Because, the danger that we put ourselves in, we've seen some crazy stuff that has happened inside these hurricanes, like, just in that Walmart parking lot where that bus was parked, the whole window just busted out of that thing. And the safety issue that you have of putting yourselves in these things, do you really need to be there? That's the first question I'd ask. But then, do you really have the tools necessary just in case you get into a vicarious situation?
You never have enough stuff.
Right.
I know that we spent a long time having a lot of little meetings about what kind of things we need to get. And most of the crap that I'm worried about is more of the collection of data than anything else.
Right.
But there's just a lot of things you need to consider. My giant bull van is not good for hurricanes.
No.
As much as I love it, and as much shit as I can pile into it, it is a giant wind vane, and it will blow over like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
The ink Jeep, we thought that maybe we were a little tall, maybe a little bit, but the wind barely pushed that thing around. In your van, we felt it.
It was amazing.
Hey, from the outside, so I watched the majority of your guys' live feed, not only this year, but Ian as well. And it felt like, and again, you guys kind of touched on it, but Ian just kind of came on shore and did just kind of, I remember Matt and you, TJ, complaining like, when is this going to stop? Yeah. I think that was like said like multiple times, like, when is this thing going to stop? When you were in that situation, like versus the Idalia hurricane itself, like what was the major difference other than, or was it just that the fact that the eye wall just sat on top of you for 6 hours?
Yeah, like we kind of didn't know what it was going to be. Like as we travel, we left Tampa 10:45 on Tuesday night. I think it was 10:45-ish. And we were watching that storm. We were driving alongside of that storm as we went up the coast there. And we were trying to figure out, where it was going to come ashore. And we had set a pinpoint of Perry, Florida at 10:45 at night, because that was the way that it had tracked. All the storm chasers models had them tracking right through there. But we had some thoughts that maybe it would be a Category 4 when it came ashore, and it was supposed to be a Category 4. But with Ian still fresh in our minds from last year from hitting Southwest Florida, like we weren't really prepared to, or we don't really know what was going to happen with this one, because everybody had talked about how big it was going to actually be. And we rode through some rain bands that were pretty heavy, and we hit some puddles of water.
I hydroplaned a few times.
Yeah, I was like, man, we don't got to go this fast. And he was like, we're trying to get there.
That's a fun Jeep, let me just say.
Yeah, we almost went sideways once or twice, but no, it was great. And you know what? Thankful for that Jeep. But those tires, they were huge, 40-inch tires. But then also they were Kevlar too, so we were safe there. Yeah. But yeah, really, not knowing what it is that we were getting into again, also making sure that we were above like a certain point, because the news was yelling, 16-foot storm surges. And if we were stuck in Apalachicola and there was a 16-foot storm surge like what it hit in Hurricane Ian into Fort Myers, where are we going to be stuck in a situation where we might be underwater again as well? And we could not find a parking garage for 100 miles. We looked everywhere on that map.
That was a big deal. Because, one of the things you have to plan ahead for, we were talking about being prepared, is knowing where you're going to hunker down once it hits. Because you can't be out driving around in the eye.
Right.
It's too much. So normally we would find a parking garage and get inside of that, and then we'd have plenty of place to walk around even during the eye, to look outside, because it would block enough the wind that we would be able to walk inside the inner layers of a parking garage. There isn't one in Perry, Georgia, or any of the surrounding cities. We'd have to go to Valdosta to have found a parking garage. So that was something that I was a little bit nervous about, because both Ida and Ian both taught us that the eye wall might sit on us for a long time.
Yeah.
And just hiding behind a wall. We went to Walmart. And that's where all the other storm chasers ended up collaborating as well. I mean, we all ended up at Walmart just hiding behind the building. And then during the eye, we'd go to the other side and hide behind the other side. But we had to plan ahead for that. So we literally found that Walmart, and that's the first place we went to so that we could scope out from that, go out from there, and always lead back to our safety point.
Yeah, that's always been the key with you and I, Matt, is like we've always touched home base at least once an hour just to make sure we're within a certain period or distance. You know, we could talk back again about Ian when you and I decided to walk out into the middle of the eye, and it was still, 75, 80 mile an hour winds, and we walked a little too far that day and got caught off guard. And, we both heard, we could hear the debris flying at us at that day. And, it's kind of sketchy when you get too far away from your protection.
Yeah, hopefully Ashley didn't hear you say that, but about debris flying at Matt. Yeah, exactly. But speaking of that, let's just say you have family members on the East Coast of Florida, and you know that a Cat 3 hurricane is about to hit that city that they're living in. Would you tell them, get your butts out of there, or would you say, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to be fine? What would you tell them now that you've lived through the hurricanes multiple times?
A lot of people say it's cat just a Cat 3, right? Like that's the saying in Florida. Oh, it's just going to be a Cat 3. But we went through a Cat 3 the other day in Hurricane Idalia. Ashley just said the wife knows all. Even though this storm, we say it wasn't that big, it was really big because there was a lot of damage. And most of that damage happened within 1 hour time frame from like 11, or no, it was actually 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning or so. And, going and looking at all of those roofs that were mangled and those buildings that were mangled and all the amount of trees that fell on top of houses, I would be telling my family it's time to go. Even if it's like a category 1 or 2, I might even have that feeling. I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in Virginia. I was a police officer in Northern Virginia for 14 years of my life. So dealing in those situations where I had to be the one that go in to save people, I would make sure that my family was going to be safe or had a place to go. But, these storms, these past few years or these past few times have been extremely strong. And we don't know if they're going to be like Ian and sit on us and just flatten our building or our house or whatever we're in.
I think the risk is too high to really sit through those. Even if you're in a concrete building, if one of your windows gets busted out, your roof could be off, and now you're exposed to the elements. There could be flying debris anywhere. One of the benefits for us is that we're mobile. Yeah. We get to drive around. So if we're in a dangerous position, we can move. If you're in a house, you're stuck. You're not going anywhere. There's no place for you to go. In most of these houses, they get damaged. Even in Florida, where the building code is so strong because of the strong winds, a lot of these houses get destroyed. Ian was in an area that was built up pretty well, but the floods just came through and demolished everything. And a lot of these houses were fairly new, and a lot of the newer houses did well, but the older ones didn't do great. Considering the eye wall was there for 6 hours, the houses did amazing.
Sure.
But there was still a ton of damage on these. There were still a ton of people that were sitting in several feet of water. There's no power for days afterwards most of the time. So why would you want to stay unless you have absolutely no reason to go? It's just too much of a risk. I don't think anybody should stay behind if there's a Cat 3 or a Cat 4 or Cat 5 coming through. Category 2, if you're in a newer home, maybe, especially if you're in an upper elevation. But if there is a evacuation, I would take that to heart.
Yeah, they had that mandatory evacuation issued, and we saw people walking around inside that storm. I still have the video of that kid. I call him a kid, right? I don't know how old he was. He looked like a younger person, but he's like walking around. He's got a GoPro on his head, and Like, that's just ridiculous. Those type of people are the ones that we always say those fuckers never die. but but for real, like, but still, like, it's crazy to not be in at least a semi-protected area.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. Hey, document your house and then get the heck out of there and go somewhere where you're going to have electricity and food that's going to be guaranteed to you,
Yeah.
So that is good advice. Matt and TJ, you'll be able to weigh in on this, because I know, you've seen engineering reports and so forth, and how the components of a roof and everything else. But Matt, after seeing, and TJ as well, after sitting through these hurricanes and having video and eyewitness evidence of what a Cat 4, Cat 3 hurricane can do to a tiled roof system, like, and Matt, this might be nerdy question for you, because I know you love engineering reports and dissecting them. Like, what is the biggest, in your opinion, inconsistency that you see on these Florida engineering reports as it translates to what your eyewitness testimony is in real life when 140-mile-an-hour winds hit these roof systems, whether it's asphalt or tile roofs?
I think the biggest problem with the engineering reports is the way the engineers apply the term proximate cause. They're trying to determine what they believe is the cause of loss that starts the chain of events off. They're not necessarily looking at the most efficient cause of loss. And they're trying to apply the idea of a cause of loss, which is really a contractual term, to a report that they're supposed to be just writing about what was causing the damage. And they don't name all the causes of loss. They only name what they believe is the proximate cause. I think it's skewed what they have. So a lot of times they'll say wear and tear, or they'll say improper installation was the cause of loss, and not wind. We know a wind event occurred. A major wind event occurred. How could this stuff that clearly looks like wind damage not be attributed to wind? So they'll say wear and tear, and then they'll stop there, and they won't say that the wear and tear made it more susceptible to wind damage, or the improper installation made it more susceptible to wind damage. Because to a forensic engineer hired by a carrier, generally, a building should be able to withstand just about everything, unless it's older or improperly installed or defective in some way, it seems. That's a very skeptical opinion.
Let's talk about that, Matt. Like, you and I saw a ton of evidence of racking in this storm. And we've talked about that extensively during our live broadcast. But those old 3 tabs, they just ripped off in the patterns that, the engineer reports or the Hague reports say is improper installation.
Yes. So there's a Donen article.
Donen,
it's
there
actually
you go. Yeah.
A set of technical papers. And if you find their Donen technical paper, I think it's Wind technical paper number 3 from Donen. And they talk about how they establish proximate cause and how wind is a contributing factor, but the original proximate cause, the negligent act, is typically improper installation or wear and tear. And they go in great detail showing all the same kind of damages that we saw during a hurricane that we captured when the wind event came through. They would call that improper installation. And they say the racking method, 3 tabs are allowed to be racked by most manufacturers. And they say that the installer should be hand sealing the shingles that they lift up to put that final nail in as they go. And that's not required at all. And they even put that in their report. But this is the problem. Engineers that are hired by mostly insurance carriers, because the ones that aren't hired by insurance carriers don't seem to do this. But the ones hired by the carriers, especially the larger firms, they try to find that one thing that they believe started everything off. And what they ought to do, and if you're listening to this and you're one of those engineers, what you ought to be doing is naming all the causes of loss that are contributing to it and letting the adjuster apply the policy. They can determine what the proximate cause is. You just need to know what all the causes were, not just cause. Stop it. You're causing a lot of problems for consumers by doing that. It's bullshit.
We saw a ton of
concern on your part.
Yeah, we saw a ton of TPO lifted as well. That was flapping. We saw a ton of tile damage, especially on mansard systems. But yeah, no, the 3 tabs definitely lost in this fight this time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you can see that the tears are up the rack and everything, and of course it is. The wind is going to cause damage to the most susceptible parts first. Every engineer report says that. Here's another thing I noticed about engineer reports when it comes to wind damages. They'll want to say that there's no damage to the eaves, rakes, or ridges, that it should happen to the corners, eaves, rakes, and ridges first before the field shingles. And so if it isn't there, then the stuff that's in the field must be mechanical damage, whatever the hell that means. Not going to get into that. There is a part of a roof that is designed to withstand more wind pressures than other parts of a roof. Guess where those parts are? The eaves, rakes, ridges, and corners. So obviously, those are going to be able to withstand the wind better than the field if they're over-engineered to be able to withstand that wind damage. Just because there's more lift pressure there doesn't mean that that's where the wind damage is going to occur first. That would only happen if it was actually improperly installed.
Man, I got to say, that was from watching both of your videos the last 2 years, that was the biggest one I took away from it, is when I saw the videos and I saw the tile roofs and not, the field tiles were shifting or breaking versus the eaves. I took that big nugget away from your all's videos. So thank you for doing that. That was my big thing I saw.
Something I grabbed in Ida. TJ wasn't with me on that one. I think you were in the hurricane somewhere else, but
I was there. I just wasn't with you and Matt.
Yeah. So one of the things that I captured in Ida was the fact that most of the wind damage on a series of asphalt shingle roofs was occurring at the chimneys before anywhere else. And which makes sense. Bernoulli's principle says anytime wind has to change direction around something, it's going to speed up, which lowers the pressure. So the maximum amount of uplift would be around a corner of a sidewall. A chimney is nothing but corners of sidewalls. So there's also flashing there. And unless the shingles are sealed to the flashing, which isn't required everywhere, it is in Florida, but not everywhere, then that's going to be a very susceptible area. And that's where it got damaged in Ida in Louisiana before anywhere else, before the ridges, before the hips, before the rakes, before the eaves. It was at the chimneys over and over and over again. And I thought that that was something that really needed to be established. So I've got that video. I've shared it many times.
We saw a ton of chimneys damaged too during this one.
Oh, man. Wherever the problem, oh my God, you got me on a soapbox here, right?
No,
worked up.
This is great information. Keep it rolling. Let's go, man.
You said my trigger word, engineer. The problem is that most of the data, most of the research that is done is based on a very simple roof system, an up and over gable or a four-sided hip. How many roofs out there are actually shaped like that? Very few. And so all these very complex roofs in all these other areas, because people want a really cool looking house that has different kinds of geometries in it, they're not going to react the same way. This isn't a wind tunnel test that you have perfect conditions. You've got vortices and in different objects changing the direction of wind constantly around you. And a wind event changes the wind direction in it. That's why you see videos of flags flapping in the wind and then suddenly changing direction and flapping backwards and then flapping forwards. It's not always in the same direction. That buffeting causes a lot of damage that isn't accounted for in wind tunnel testing. Reality is different. Anyway,
I still have 6 minutes of that particular video that you're talking about now with the American flag that was on top of the Walmart. And I haven't posted that yet. I can't wait to post that video. But like you were saying, the way the wind was moving, like you'd see it coming across the parking lot from the north, and then it'd come from the south, and like all of a sudden the truck would go sideways to the east, and you're like, how is this wind hitting us like this? But we saw that one chimney that it probably was very tall, and the way that it fell down the roof, instead of going off the side of the roof, it went down the roof. Like you're saying, the wind direction was just everywhere that day.
It was against the wind direction, that chimney.
Yeah.
It fell into the wind.
Yeah.
Which is something that most engineers, and even, it doesn't really make sense to me either. But fluid dynamics isn't something we can visualize in reality. It is too complex to be able to understand. We just need to know this event occurred, and consequently, this happened at the same time or immediately following that. It's got to be related. It is you can't rule out that wind was a part of that. So stop writing only wear and tear or improper installation and start naming all the causes of loss so that the adjusters can do their jobs.
Can I let me ask a question if you guys don't mind, and I'll ask it to you guys. I don't mind to put you on the spot, but today I saw the Washington Post article where it said that some of the top 5 insurance carriers are going to be cutting natural disaster coverage from the policies. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my first gut reaction is all right, well, you better leave the state of Florida, Louisiana, or anywhere else that's, in the panhandle type area. I mean, that carrier is going to be gone. Somebody's going to end up assuming that risk, in my opinion. I think it's actually going to hurt policyholders because the premiums are going to go up in the natural disaster area with other, big guys pulling out, so to speak. Hey, look, they can decide what they want to do. Somebody, in my opinion, I believe somebody will pick up the slack, but I think it will ultimately result in premiums being raised, in the hurricane type areas. But yeah, I just shake my head at it.
Go ahead, Mike.
That's something that Remington's right. I mean, the premiums are going to go up, but the premiums always go up. They never go down. So yeah, it's inevitable. But ultimately, there's been plenty of reports, especially coming out of Florida, that have explained why the rates have gone up so much, and why the insurance companies are going out of business. And none of it has to do with the things that they're saying that it has to do with. It's never mentioned that there is an extreme amount of litigation, or there's a lot of appraisal or contractors that are knocking on doors that's causing the issue. What is happening is, in these reports, mishandling of funds, bad management of company funds. Yeah. And as it turns out, a lot of these funds are being funneled into shell corporations and other things that are taking the money out of that company, giving it to the shareholders and the CEOs, and then that company just goes insolvent. Right. So once a state decides that the reporting is going to have to show where all the money goes to, once that can be in the regulations that the state has to, or the insurance company is required to show where the money's going and who the owners of those companies are, then we'll actually have some transparency and see what the hell's going on. But outside of that, it's going to be very difficult.
It looks like
very large companies that know what's happening. But
looks like Allstate, American Family, Nationwide, Erie, and Berkshire Hathaway have said that the damage caused by hurricanes, wind, and hail from policies underwriting property along coastlines, they're gonna be doing away with hail, wind, and hurricanes.
And the more that they complain about everything, the more likely it is that the state's going to have to bend in order to allow them to have coverage in that state for everything. So who's going to have to pick that up? It's going to have to be state sponsored things. It's going to be socialized, basically, homeowners insurance.
And if that's the case,
it's surprising that that's going to happen in Florida, to be honest.
If that's the case, what you're saying, TJ, was in that article, and it is going to actually be a fact, there needs to be a very straightforward type form sent to these policyholders that have been with these carriers for the last 10, 5, 20 years, whatever it might be. And they are really put on notice that their roof is not covered from storm damage, and they have to sign off on it, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of carriers that are going to be premium grabbing. And then when a hurricane comes, they're going to say, oh, you didn't see endorsement on page 212 that you don't have hurricane damage, covered hurricane damage. So the states better take this, and they better take it seriously and protect their insureds, by making it mandatory for these carriers to send something like that out, because people are going to be taken advantage of. There's no doubt.
Yeah, no, that's when I saw that. I actually saw that Steve Badger posted that this morning on LinkedIn, and so I took it and I read it, and I couldn't believe that. We've been talking about what if, what if insurance ever disappeared, and everybody's like, oh, insurance will never disappear, but here we are at a crossroads.
These companies are making a profit. They're just not showing it because they're feeding it to something else. So there's money in it. And if there's money in something like that, it will continue to exist. There's going to be other companies like Lemonade or something that will fill in the gaps. Jay Bradley made a comment that I want to talk about. Jay, he says, we'll be asking line items from the government instead of the carriers. Let me say this. Very few public adjusters will take on flood claims because you're asking for line items from FEMA. And that's just not going to happen. They're going to do what they do, period. That's it. If you're talking about Citizens Insurance or other state regulated insurance carriers, then you could have a little bit more leeway. But a federal program, we can't let that happen because then the policyholder is stuck with whatever they say. Imagine the IRS telling you how much money you're going to get from damages at your home. There's no leeway. It's not a negotiation anymore.
At some points, though, the government has done that in regards to, for example, like FEMA, whenever they give out the FEMA checks, right? When I lived in Virginia and we have a hurricane come through Virginia, they'd be like, well, how much did you have in your refrigerator? And you'd be like, oh, I had $500 worth of groceries. And they wrote you a check for $500, but they weren't going to go over $750 total or whatever. And that's kind of what this sounds like could be occurring later.
You're not wrong.
So
you're not wrong.
We're kind of experiencing some of that with FIGA stuff right now. Not going to go too deep into it, but where we know there's a certain threshold where they're willing to try and get a resolution on claims. And if you're over that threshold, it's going to be an issue, and we're seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you hit that line and they just put you to the bottom of the list, right? There's groups of payments that they're going to send out. You're over that limit, you're not in that group. Right. You're waiting longer, and it's rough. And at some point, the money runs out. So you don't want to be above that limit, but you're taking in a hell of a lot less than what you paid for. So there's definitely a breach of contract whenever a company goes insolvent. And then the government gets in the way and says that you can't really sue them for that anymore. Oddly enough, and FIGA gets in and they're the ones doling out payments. There's gonna be some fraud investigations. There fucking better be, with the way that the money is going out. And people need to get a little bit upset about it to make this happen. And I feel like people are just over it. And at this point, they're like, you know what? Whatever. Everything is screwing me. I just want to move on with my life. They need to get a little bit in an uproar for there to be any kind of movement on this, because the governments only care about health insurance and auto insurance. There's very few state governments that actually care about property.
Because roofers aren't doctors, right? So, but somebody outside of roofing texted me today and was asking for a quote in regards to whether or not I was feeling like hurricanes and storms were getting stronger. And I think they were trying to allude to the whole climate change thing. What do you guys think about that? So,
I mean, you know what? I'll be completely honest. If I don't have enough data, or I feel like I'm an expert in something, or can even talk really, really intelligently about it, I'm not going to. And I can be honest, I just haven't been knee deep into the whole, global warming thing. I've heard all the theories, but I've never done the research myself. I can say this: hurricanes have been happening for a long, long time, but look, I don't have enough data to say one way or another.
There is a lot of There's a lot of data that suggests that the stuff is going to get worse, and the bean counters at the insurance companies that are doing the math to try to identify what the premiums should be, what the outgo is likely to be in the future, they're all looking at it like it's going to be a lot more than before, which is why a lot of this stuff is coming out. And there's plenty of evidence that the oceans are getting warmer, and the warmer the oceans are, the stronger hurricanes will be. And there has been an increase in the amount of tornadoes even. So, I mean, there's evidence. There's plenty of it. We've been tracking a lot of stuff for many years, and it's more now. And it seems to be that it's related to carbon emissions, carbon that we can track to human activity because of the amount of electrons attached to them. There's a lot of misinformation, and politics needs to get the fuck out of the way. It's
for sure.
And I feel like I'm being interviewed on this one.
Get it, Matt. Get it, Matt.
Oh man,
do it, brother. Do
passion, brother.
Yeah, well, we've got 2 more hurricanes coming off the coast, or actually, there's one about 800 miles south of the.
Jeremy's got a good point here, real quick, about the science. He says if scientists are right, the Earth is billions of years old, and our data size of what we know is almost nothing. That's 100% true, and the Earth has changed a lot naturally, many, many times over the billions of years. But it's a very precarious balance. You look at other planets in the solar system, and they were Earth-like at one time, and they stopped being Earth-like for reasons. Those reasons have a lot to do with greenhouse-type gases and other things. But if we have the ability to keep our greenhouse gases, within a certain range, then we can keep Earth-like for a lot longer than it probably naturally would be. So regardless of whether or not we're causing the issues, we don't want it to change because we want to live in it. So if there's ways for us to prevent it through terraforming of our own planet, we should do that. I don't care what the cause is. You guys can get off your soapboxes about it.
What do you think about me getting banned on TikTok?
That was funny.
What did you get banned for, TJ?
So we got to 100,000 viewers on TikTok, and the live stream cut like it's done before. And it said I violated a community guideline for doing dangerous stuff. And I mean, I feel like, I
was sitting there next to you. You had a knife in your hand. You were threatening to murder me the whole time. I mean, obviously. That's pretty funny because they had you at the top of TikTok. Or what was it called?
They gave me they sent me a notification saying that I was #1 in the world during the hurricane for live broadcast current.
That's insane.
And
then they kicked you.
And then like 20 minutes later, I got banned. Only got banned for 10 minutes, and we could have probably gone back live again. But I just didn't want to because I'm like, they don't ever tell you exactly what it is that you're banned for. They just are like community guidelines violation. And I think it probably had something with us to do with us driving. If we would have just been sitting still, I think we would have been fine.
I mean, whoever was #2 reported you for sure. That guy needs to be kicked in the balls.
Right. He lost.
How many viewers were there at that time?
Well, we were up to 100,000, 96.9 thousand.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And then after that ended, we were stuck to the StreamYard, and we had quite a bit of viewers live compared to what normally happens through Facebook and YouTube channels. I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in the 200 range, I want to say, watching us live on those channels. And I'm sure that there's been a ton of viewers since then. Yeah. Nothing like what we would have had on TikTok. And we need to get the word out on some of these things because it helps communities get money in donations to know how bad the community has been hit.
Yeah. I had almost 1,000 viewers on my YouTube on that particular live. But yeah, I think that those had to do with
a lot more than I thought then. I retract my previous statement.
No, most likely we had a couple hundred, but there were times we had 75, 80 people watching, and we never get to see exactly how many, how long they stay around, or did they come and go, or who were those viewers? You don't get to see those. But I'm emailing TikTok today, as a matter of fact, to, figure out what I did wrong, and then also to try and, put a bug in their ear that, hey, look, I am a journalist, and I use this platform to show other people exactly what we've talked about before. We show, that what's actually going on in those areas, what's occurring, what insurance companies can't deny that's happening. And we're getting this as evidence to use if we ever need it. So,
it's a shame though. I mean, with all that viewership, you think they'd want that viewership, and by booting you off, I mean, you were clearly a passenger.
Yeah.
Running the whole thing. Whatever. I guess it doesn't promote someone doing some other things, but I mean, they could have had something where it said only people 18 years old and older could have been watching. It would have been
we
nice.
could have been eating Tide Pods.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
It's not a challenge. It's not the Hurricane Idalia challenge,
Right.
To drive into the hurricane. Although we did see some Florida men for sure trying to do weird shit. We had Remington, and I don't know if we got a good, clear enough video of this. I haven't found it yet. But we have video of a dude in front of that very Walmart that we were hiding behind during the eye, standing outside in the eye in a full American flag regalia. Everything he wore was American flags. I mean, it was America, right? And it was Florida man. And he was just showing off that he was able to brave it. And it was really dumb.
Well, there was like one person driving like a 1990 Corolla in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were vehicles surrounding that area with blown out windows because of flying debris during that eye. It only lasted like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But even if the only thing flying around was the little pieces of glass from the broken windows you can't see coming, that's not going to feel good. I don't know.
We pulled up in front of that one church, though.
Yeah. Wanted him to get hurt. I'll be honest.
Except for the guy in front of the church. We were getting hit on social media or on my TikTok because we pulled up in front of a church and we were trying to find a place to put that camera. And then we realized that there was a dude sleeping on the ground in front of the church.
That was terrible. Yeah.
And they were like, well, you need to help him. And they're like, well, how do you help somebody in that situation?
You stick him in your car and then you continue driving through the hurricane. I don't know if that's really helping anybody. So it wasn't there when we went back around after the eye. His cooler was. We didn't see any evidence of an issue. I think he found a way to either get inside or get to another place. But that is a sad truth about natural disasters. There are a lot of deaths of homeless people during these things. Shelters are open for these, but they don't. I don't know.
And
I don't know.
TJ,
maybe they don't even get news of it. I mean, if they don't,
I think when you send this email to TikTok, really like what you guys are doing is providing this information to the masses of what it's really like being in the middle of the hurricane, what it could potentially be like for you and your family if you decide to be stubborn and stay in these areas where there's, you must evacuate. And in a sense, in my opinion, you got to look at it that way. And you guys are saving lives by, these people the word is going to spread. And I think that's the best way to look at it. It's not like you're a stunt man. It's not like you're surfing these waves, right? And being an idiot versus
surfboard next time.
There you go. And then I could see TikTok canceling that. But the way you guys handle it, I mean, really, and the fact that you guys have the experience and the professionalism going into these storms, and you know what to expect. Like, if you guys don't do it, then who else will? So TikTok needs to really think about that.
Yeah, there were other people that were live broadcasting from outside their house, like standing in their backyard. Like, it's really not that much different. We're really just showing what's happening in live public view. But yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind when I'm emailing them today, because I do have millions of people who watch my channel, and most of those people became followers of mine because of these types of events or videos that I post in regards to weather or current events. And I like to be known for that current event, and having over 310,000 followers on TikTok, they've come from somewhere, and it wasn't just because I was good looking, I promise. So
Definitely wasn't that.
but no, we've got 2 more hurricanes that we're potentially watching the next 8 to 10 days. Tropical storm 13 or tropical depression 13 formed last night, and they're thinking it'll be a hurricane by the end of the day today. And then there's a new wave coming off the coast of Africa that I was telling Matt earlier last night that this thing looks huge. And if it does stay intact and does become something, I'm kind of concerned about the one that's behind 13.
Yeah, I mean, there's more than likely going to be another hurricane this season.
Sure.
I'm surprised we haven't gotten any questions from contractors on whether or not it's worth going into the zone of Idalia or anything like that. I'm really surprised no one's even tried to ask.
I swear it was the question I had on the top of my head. I wanted to ask.
The very next one.
Is it worth going into, ground zero as a contractor and picking up this work and chasing these storms where they hit landfall?
I'll let Matt answer and then I'll answer.
Or even how about this? Because maybe is it worth it? Might not be the best way to phrase it. Do you have any advice for them? Like what to expect? How about that?
Right. So there's a lot of things that you can learn from other contractors that have done a lot of this. We look at CMR right now, and potentially they overextended themselves, and there are other companies like that. So one of the issues you want to evaluate if you are a contractor is can you handle bonds and different things enough or float enough money for materials to get to the point where you actually get paid if it's an insurance claim, because these are claims. They're going to take a little while. They're going to take a lot more work. You're going to have to prove a lot of stuff. It's not a retail environment. So there's a lot that you have to evaluate whether or not you're going to go storm chasing. If you are going to go storm chasing, you need some cash flow already. You don't need to plan on that being your cash flow. This is not something where it makes you. You need to already be fairly successful to do these things. If you are, they need you desperately. But there's also going to be some opposition. The government in Florida, the government in Georgia, even both of them came out and said, don't talk to door knockers, because those are the locusts. Those are the people that are going to come and scam you. And so they're terrified. They just got hit with a giant hurricane. They need your help, and they're afraid to say yes. They think that you're going to scam them. So it's an uphill battle, and you need to be aware of that. You also need to go in with a lot of resources, because it's possible you're not going to have any resources while you're there. You might not have cell service. So the Starlink is a wonderful thing, by the way. Thank God for Starlink.
Yeah, we had those 2 Wi-Fi devices. Thank God for those this past week. But we wouldn't have had any service at all if we didn't have those Wi-Fi devices. The cell phone service on our phones went out. So
Chuck asked if the area is already saturated with roofing contractors from Idalia. No, but there isn't a lot of buildings out there either. So there's a lot of commercial work that probably still needs work. Yeah. I think that if you are a contractor trying to commercial work, you should probably develop some MRPs or something in advance to be able to get a lot of those. I mean, every commercial building was damaged in some way. The Walmart we were hiding behind has a lot of water damage in it right now. Yeah. Right. And it was the building we were hiding behind because it was the best structurally sound building there was in that town. And it has damage. So everything's been damaged in that town right there at the coast. But as you get further away from where the eye made landfall, the damage is going to be less and less apparent from the street. You'll still find it as you get up close and you really start looking. And then the further down the line, it's going to be more and more difficult. But the further away from that main center point, the less contractors there are, the less competition there is, but also the harder the claim would be. Because then the carriers are saying that it's maybe it's not caused by the hurricane, maybe it's something else. So there's a happy medium somewhere in there, and it depends on your level of capability on where it is you want to be.
Let me answer that question from the roofing contractor standpoint. And being a storm chaser my entire career, I have talked to quite a few storm contractors about what I saw in Perry. I saw a lot of roofs get damaged, right? a lot of those damages came from tree fall, but not necessarily wind damage. And if there was a lot of wind damage, I can see a lot of the insurance carriers paying for repairs versus replacement. In that general area, there was, 3,000 residents and 1,500 total buildings. If I were to say, should you chase it from Colorado? No, you should stay home. But also you should have a plan and a business attack that you're actually going to be able to be sustainable in this storm or any storm that comes in the near future. There are a lot of roofers in Florida now that are going to the retail model where they're giving a contract to a homeowner based on their price and then allowing them to fight the insurance carrier later, so that way it doesn't hold up their cash flow, and they're providing them options, financing options or other things, but also still helping them through the claims process if that's needed. But then, the legislatures have just made it so hard for roofers that a lot of times they just don't want to even deal with that anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I mean, there are courses out there. Remington and I have taught a course on preparing for a hurricane in the past. I anticipate we'll probably do a lot more of that in the future. If you guys are thinking about that kind of thing, I would recommend you get a little bit of training before you go storm chasing, especially into a hurricane. It's widespread. There are a lot of potential pitfalls, a lot of mistakes that you can make. Too much for a 1-hour podcast. Maybe we'll do that as a topic soon, though, for the podcast. I like that.
Well, let's. You know what? Maybe we can do that the day of the hurricane, the next one that we go to. I know we're planning on it already. We're already working on making sure we up our equipment this next time. We've had those conversations today as well to make sure that we had some other things that we just need. We have to have it, like some better camera systems. So if you guys are out there watching, and you guys want to support us, we definitely could use some financial help in regards to being able to purchase some of this other equipment that we would be able to utilize as evidence.
Yeah. The stuff that can withstand a hurricane costs a lot more. Go figure.
Yeah. Right.
You should see the price of windows now, Matt. It's crazy down there. Hey, I have a question because I know we're getting to the end of this. And this is something that I argue all the time with insurance carriers. Let's just concentrate on Ian, because I know it was a larger storm. We all know that. Is windborne debris a real thing? Like when a client's commercial building has impacts from, it looks like, let's just say 6-inch impacts all the way to 3-inch impacts and so forth. Is that like a real thing that you guys saw, like personally, that this is no joke?
I mean, my wife is watching right now, so I don't know if I want to say this, but TJ and I watched a piece of metal fly towards our heads in the middle of Ian, because we didn't realize we were standing in the eye. We thought it was over 6 hours after it originally hit us. So that shit happens. There's stuff flying around all over the place. It's dangerous.
Yeah, I was watching back through some of the videos from this past week, and we saw a building that we weren't quite sure how it got a hole in the side of the ephes, and we still don't know how it happened. But it was on the
opposite side where the wind would have been blowing at, the majority of it anyway.
But also, even in when I was working Ida and then also Ian as a storm contractor, there were shingles that were embedded in the side of people's houses, inside the siding or even the ephes systems. And can you imagine it being like a ninja star, if you will, and just like going in 4 or 5 inches deep into the siding?
I mean, that shit happens. Everything that is a metal panel that is loose doesn't quite have enough fasteners. Or imagine the amount of buffeting that happens in wind event. The fasteners work their way out. That loose metal panel usually has some sharp edges. Everything's a ninja star, if you think about it. I mean, it's not quite as bad as a tornado, where a 2x4 might go through a building or something being thrown at 200 something miles per hour, but 120, 130 mile per hour winds is nothing to joke about.
Right.
And if you get the right profile of something coming at you, it's going to do some damage. There's definitely a lot of wind blowing. We've seen rocks thrown around, but
You
things
know,
come off the roofs, and
yeah.
so they're high up to begin with, and then they're thrown. There's plenty of stuff that could happen.
Derek Klein's been sharing a video at these Atlas events this year from Hurricane Ian, where him and Matt Behrens are sitting inside of the hail trace truck, and a stoplight comes flying past them at over 200 miles an hour. So, you know, a stoplight is as big as a person, not 200, but
yeah, it was
150 miles an hour during that part of the event. But a stoplight is the size of a human being. You know, just think about that.
Are they?
Oh yeah, they're 6-8 feet tall.
So, why don't they look that big?
I don't know.
Are they really?
When you stand up, really? Oh, when you stand up next to one.
Yeah, next time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How about this, Matt? They're the size of middle schoolers. Okay.
Oh, middle schoolers.
Is that okay? Yeah. Well, you good with that?
You're kids.
Yeah. Got you.
Oh man, I love it.
The wind-driven debris is definitely a thing, and we saw a lot of it. And I'm gonna post some more videos, and then Matt's got more videos. We're trying to get all these GoPro videos together so we can get them launched. But we have one video in particular that the entire tin roof is being ripped off, and I can't wait to post that one.
We'll go around town before it hits, and we'll post up these cameras in these waterproof cases, and we'll strap them to something that's going to be secure. And it's these GoPro cameras that Euroshield supplied for us.
Yeah,
we've got others as well, and we're pointing them at structures that we think would probably be damaged, or structures that are interesting. So, to be honest, my entire purpose of doing that is to prove that things happen the way that a lot of forensic engineers say don't happen. That's my entire purpose behind it. But there's a lot of data that can come from these things. So we caught a tin roof being damaged this time. Some of the other cameras didn't come out. That's why we put a lot of them out there. Sometimes we don't capture anything. Sometimes we get exactly the kind of stuff we want. So the more cameras that we can post around, the better. The more advanced notice of what's coming, the better. But we're putting them wherever we can. And it takes forever to upload all this stuff. So you guys got to be patient when we do this, because these files are huge. We're trying to shoot them in 4K so that we can actually zoom in on stuff when it happens in the video for the editing. So these files are enormous. Yeah. And it takes a while to upload and dig through it all. Many hours of content per camera. It takes a while.
We did it in 1440 instead of 1080 this time, but it was well worth it, because I think if we would have done it in 1080, it might not have come out as clear as the 1440 did.
I mean, there's still a lot of rain in the way. It's still a lot of visibility issues, but you can clearly see that some things are happening. So,
Matt, it's a hurricane, man.
It's
going to happen. And I know we kind of like touched on this a little bit, but for the viewers, for really, I feel like hurricane season now we're in the midst of it versus back in July. Usually it's kind of in this time of the year. If another hurricane's coming, are you guys going and chasing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're there. We're already talking about it now, right now. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we're
US, East Coast kind of a thing. That's where that Jeep is. I don't know if I want to go into a hurricane without the iink Jeep again. That was so stable, so good.
I think we'll stock it a little bit better next time.
Yeah.
But I think we had everything we needed this time. But except for those other things that even I was talking with Josh Gless this morning. He was saying, don't forget to get a scuba on it. And you know what? A scuba would be great. But we're already 60 inches above the water line.
Yeah. I mean, the air intake inside that engine is already really high. Ian, there was plenty of areas we could have driven through, even with this Jeep, that we would not have been able to drive through with anything else that we've had in the past, even without a scuba. I feel like that's not the right word suddenly. A snorkel.
Snorkel.
Yeah.
Even without a snorkel attached.
I know what you mean.
Is a light bar though. That's something. The Jeep has two headlights. It doesn't have fog lights. It doesn't have anything. It's got two headlights, and because it looks angry, part of it is actually cut off to make it look angrier. It's a badass Jeep. but we need more lighting. So we definitely need a light bar. I'd like to put a camera outside the vehicle beyond the windshield so that it doesn't have to continually focus in on the windshield, then focus out as the wipers come through.
A
But to
remote
get a
control.
camera that can do that is going to cost some funds. So we're looking for sponsors. The sponsors that we had for that hurricane were fantastic. Ink Payments, Huggins Law Firm. This guy, we love this guy.
Remington. Yeah. I looked at Matt and I was like, do you want to use my card? And he's like, no, Remington is taking care of it. I said, thank God.
I got you guys.
Yeah, that's something that we didn't talk about this time that we did mess up last time is this time I think you got tired of me saying every 4 miles, hey, we should stop for gas. You know,
yeah. You did. You were a little nervous about it. As
man.
It turns out, by the way, TJ, we would have run out of gas, even with all that gas in the back, because none of the nozzles would have opened our gas tank.
Yeah, and we didn't know that.
Since then, I've had to manufacture this in my garage, an adapter system. So we're set now, but I had to make something to make this work.
Wow. We got to one gas station and we couldn't get it in because the Jeep has a blocking system inside the gas tank that prevents anything from going inside of it unless it's the perfect cylindrical. Is that what it's called?
Perfect size.
Yeah.
So many women out there.
But yeah, no, we definitely were stopping for diesel every 5 minutes. But I wanted to be sure. I was like, hey, if we go into the storm now, how far out are we going to be? My wife is saying.
I'm glad that you did that. It was annoying, but I'm glad you did that because it turns out we needed to do that.
Yeah, but you know what? We ended up we only had about 350 miles to the tank, but still, at noon we were down to about half. Yeah. So if that would have been a Hurricane Ian storm, we would have been out of gas before 6 o'clock. So
we had about 50 extra gallons in the trunk that we would not have been able to even use.
Yeah,
because we couldn't get it into the tank. That's crazy. Anyway, if you guys have any questions about hurricanes and how it works, you can reach out to TJ McCormack. What's your email address, TJ?
TJ at Roofr. If you guys don't know what Roofr is, measurements, proposals, CRM, it's everything that you need for your roofing company.
So TJ at Roofr, spelled ROOFR.
Just like that right there.
Yeah. So I can barely see it though.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it now.
On my shirt.
It's on your shirt. Yeah. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Literally.
Branded.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being on, TJ. I'm going to kick you off and talk about
Thank you guys.
Now.
Hey, thank you guys. Remington, I'll see you soon. Thank you, Matt.
See you, TJ.
I'll give you a call later.
See you later. All right. Well, thank you to our sponsors for listening to this bull show. If you guys are getting a lot out of this, it's because of our sponsors that we can do this show. Claim Titan is a CRM for public adjusters that is amazing. And Eric is the man and will actually make good changes almost immediately. It's impressive. The thing is up to date. It's got a clean UI. It's got every single requirement that I gave him built into it. It's Claim Titan. Take a look at that. Building Experts Institute is the school that I am one of the owners of. We have online training for contractors, public adjusters, insurance adjusters, engineers, attorneys. We just dropped a hail identification to asphalt shingle roofs class. It's about an 8-hour course on identifying hail damage specifically on asphalt shingles. It is very in-depth. It is very good. You need to get a membership because it's only $109 a month. And there's no commitment. You might as well. It's a freaking no-brainer. American Policyholder Association is a group of individuals that are dedicated to uncovering insurance fraud committed by insurance carriers and prosecuting against it. And there's been a lot of stuff that they've been able to do lately. It's really impressive to see what's actually happening behind the scenes right now with them. And now it's becoming visible. Huggins Law Firm, that's Remington. Remington, your turn.
Hey, everybody. We help policyholders work with contractors and public adjusters every single day. Leave it at that.
And then there's the Hook Agency, the Roofr marketing firm, one of the best that I've seen. So if you guys are roofers and you need some help with your marketing, Hook Agency can hook you up. See what I did there? Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks for the sponsors. We will see you guys next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. I am curious, though, for all of you that are watching, we used to do this at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'd like to know your opinion about this new time slot that we've tried out for, 6 episodes now? I want to see how it's going for everyone. I'm really liking the time slot personally, but I want to see your opinions. So,
And I am too. And I want to let everybody know kind of the change and the reason behind it is because, hey, look, you can still be sitting at work and we can be background music while you're listening and working at the same time versus like a later time when, you know, maybe it's family time or whatever it might be, whatever you do outside of work. So we wanted to do it where it's more convenient for you as a viewer.
If we need to go earlier, we'll figure this out. Just let us know what your opinion is on this. You know, our audience drives us more than anything else. So we really want to thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Peace. Bye.